You know the names, right? Big, Zaha, Foster, Gensler, SOM. I could go on and on here. They come up everywhere. Awards, publications, lectures, these kind of offices kind of dominate part of the architecture conversation. And sure, they do both work, no denying that, but architecture is so much more than the usual star-architect lineup and mega corporate offices with 1,000 employees. There's a whole world of practices out there working at different scales, in different contexts, with radically different ideas. Firms that are experimenting with materials, rethinking spatial experiences, and reshaping how we relate to landscape and environment. Many of them don't have massive PR machines or global offices, but they are doing incredible work and they deserve to be a part of the conversation as well. Or at least, I think that more professionals and students should expand their repertoire. And well, we can start with this video here, right? So let's dive into something that I'm really excited about. In this video, we're going to look at 12 studios around the world that are worth checking out. And we group them into 3 distinct categories that highlight their unique approaches. And I'm not here to give you just the usual resume or Wikipedia facts. Also, this isn't a definitive list. There could be hundreds of other amazing firms. And well, something very important, I'm not here to discover anyone. Far from that, what we're doing is just widening the lens. I want to bring you closer at how these studios work, what drives their design philosophies, and well, what makes their designs and projects stand out. By the way, if you like this type of content, here we talk about architectural visual communication, representation and visualization, but also as architects, we explore videos on many topics. So consider subscribing if you find this video helpful. Okay, so to make sense of the 12 studios we're going to be exploring, we divided them into 3 categories that help us better understand their different approaches and focuses. The first category is alternate spatiality. These studios challenge traditional ideas of space. They create new spatial experiences, question boundaries between inside and outside, and explore unexpected ways people interact with places, and invite us to rethink what spaces can be. Then the second category is new materialities. These studios that we picked diving deep into material innovation and exploration. They experiment with how materials can shape, form, texture, and meaning. It's about treating materials as a core part of the design process. And then the third category is perspective on landscape. Studios in this group focus on the relationship between environment and architecture. They look close at sustainability, context, and how buildings can connect with and enhance their natural surroundings. It's about seeing architecture as part of a larger ecological system. Together, these categories reveal 3 distinct but complementary directions, each showing a different way architects are pushing their craft forward. Okay, so the first category, alternate spatialities, and well, in no particular order, let's start with Vector Architects. Founded by Gong Dong in Beijing, China, they've developed a practice that reimagines spatial relationships through a sensitive reading of physical, social, and cultural context. Their projects challenge conventional modes of occupation, proposing architectures that act as mediators between people, landscape, and memory. Blending formal simplicity, construction rigor, and spatial experimentation, the studio creates environments that foster new ways of inhabiting, gathering, and perceiving space, often blurring boundaries between interior, exterior, public, and private. Next, we've got a Portuguese firm, Nuno Melo Souza's, a practice that is defined by an experimental approach that challenges conventional notions of space, program, and occupation. Their work moves fluidly between architecture, drawing, and installation, often operating at a small scale with limited resources, which then amplifies the precision and material inventiveness. Through architecture gestures that reconfigure the relationship between body, object, and place, their projects propose alternative spatialities that question ways of inhabiting, creating sensitive, playful, and well, often temporary or even transitional experiences. Then we've got Bangkok Tokyo Architecture between Japan and Thailand. An architecture firm with a practice that challenges traditional spatial models as well, operating across diverse scales, programs, and then geographies in this case. Their projects often explore hybrid construction systems, inventive adaptations, and unconventional spatial solutions that arise from urban constraints and local cultural dynamics. The study investigates how architecture can be open-ended, flexible, and unexpected uses, offering solutions that expand the possibilities of inhabitation within dense, fragile, and rapidly changing contexts. And then lastly on this category, we gotta talk about Estúdio Gustavo Utrabo, a Brazilian firm exploring architecture capable of generating new forms of social, environmental, and spatial coexistence. A practice that is rooted in a careful reading of the territory, proposing spaces built at the intersection of local techniques, environmental performance, and new models of collective occupation. So it's using the open structures, the precise geometries, and the sensitive materiality that their projects rethink the relationship between architecture, nature, and community. It just offers spatial conditions that embrace both gathering and retreat. Okay, quite a start of the list, right? So as we move forward, let me know in the comments below if you already knew all of these firms and what do you think about them, and even if you have any suggestions for each of these categories, okay? So now let's move on to new Materialities. Beginning with Filman, which is a Danish architecture studio driven by an experimental approach, focusing on reused materials and construction methods rooted in craftsmanship. Having recently curated the Danish pavilion on the Venice Biennale, their work explores the intersection between architecture, making, and circularity, prioritizing technical qualities, constructive honesty, and, well, the beauty of imperfection. And rather than starting from predefined forms, the studio here develops projects that emerge from materials and building techniques themselves, constantly challenging conventional aesthetics and industrial processes. Next up, Al Borde is an Ecuadorian collective driven by a socially engaged practice where collaborative processes and local materials are central. Their work explores vernacular architecture, traditional techniques, and collective intelligence as engines for innovation. Recently winning the prestigious Swiss Architectural Award, and rather than imposing solutions, the studio activates local knowledge, promoting architecture that is built with communities. So their approach combines technical rigor, inventiveness, and deep social and environmental awareness. Then we've got Messina Rivas, a São Paulo-based architecture practice founded in 2016. Their work investigates construction as a design tool, exploring material reuse, structural experimentation, and processes that embrace imperfection and manual labor. Through a very direct engagement with builders in site conditions, their projects just propose spatial solutions that are both technically clever and creative and also socially grounded. Their approach is informed by previous collaborations with the award-winning Gabinete de Arquitectura in Paraguay, but it's continuously then reinterpreted through the realities of the Brazilian context. And then lastly in this category, let me talk about BC Architects and Studies, a Belgian practice that operates at the intersection of architecture, research, and construction, focusing on the revival of natural, local, and low-impact materials such as, well, raw earth, lime, and plant fibers. Their realistic approach integrates the development of building techniques, local supply chains, and community training. Each project emerged from a deep understanding of materials and processes, challenging industrial paradigms and proposing generative architecture with social, environment, and cultural impact. I mean, this is such a specific selection of firms. Honestly, our team went deep into research for this. We pulled, well, from our own personal archive of go-to references, but also expanded this list to make it more global. We really wanted to bring a diverse set of studios pushing things forward from different angles. Okay, so let's move forward to the last category, perspective on landscape. Istanbul-based So Architecture and Ideas develops a practice that investigates the relationship between architecture and landscape. Their projects explore how architecture can respond to social, environment, and territorial urgencies, offering temporary, experiment, or even permanent solutions that expand the conversation around the use of collective space. It's by using context-driven interventions that the studio challenges established urban models and activates new possibilities for inhabiting, caring for, and then sharing the territory. So after that, we had to include C733 or C733, something like this, which is an architecture collective based in Mexico City, whose practice is guided by a sensitive reading of territory, landscape, and public space. Their projects are deeply rooted in context, exploring relationship with topography, local materials, and traditional building knowledge as core design tools. The studio's work combines technical precision with spatial poetry, reflecting social, cultural, and environmental dynamics of each site, always seeking architecture that emerges from the needs and the potentials of its context. Then we move on to Argentina, an office called Bula that specializes in architectural landscape with an approach that deeply integrates built work with natural and cultural environment. Their practice explores landscape as a central element, aiming to enhance ecological and social qualities of the site. By employing local materials, artisanal techniques, and a strong sensitivity to context, Bula creates projects that encourages harmony between built space and nature, emphasizing sustainability and territorial memory. And to wrap it all up, our last firm, but definitely not least, based in Tasmania, Taylor and Hinds Architects comes from a practice that looks very specifically at the territory, exploring architecture as a means to intensify the experience of landscape. Their projects such as the Krakani Lumi, a cultural camp for the Aboriginal Land Council of Tasmania, demonstrate an approach that values local materiality, human scale, and a sensory connection to the natural surroundings. Through compact forms and meticulously detailed interiors, the studio creates spaces that reflect on contemplative immersion in the environment, respecting and celebrating the cultural and ecological narratives of the place. So there you go, 12 studios, 3 categories, and hopefully a whole bunch of new ideas to explore. Let me know in the comments which one stood out the most to you, and if there's another practice you think more people should know about. Let's make this comment section as collaborative as possible to share all of that. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you're into architecture, representation, visual communication, and everything in between, you know what to do. Just hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.